I think I didn't do anything wrong, just told the truth about what I needed. He was too quiet, so I filled the silence with honesty. I thought he'd thank me for being open-minded. Instead, he came home one night with an envelope and said everything would now be handled properly. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I think I didn't do anything wrong, just said what I felt instead of hiding it like other women do. Honesty is supposed to make things stronger, right? That's what all those self-help podcasts said. So when I told Eli that I sometimes thought about being with other people, I believed I was being brave. He didn't yell, didn't cry, just stared at me for a long time, the way he does when he's deciding if something is worth fixing or just needs to be left alone. Eli has always been calm like that, too calm. He teaches chemistry at the local high school, comes home at 5:30, cooks plain food, watches quiet documentaries. I'm 32, a receptionist at Bright Dental, where everything smells like mint and disinfectant. I spend my days scheduling cleanings and smiling at strangers. Dr. Marcus Glenn, my boss, calls me the heartbeat of the office. I like that. He says it in front of patients too, so everyone hears. Eli never says things like that. When I told Eli I wanted more freedom, he asked what that meant. I said I wanted to try an open marriage. He asked if I was unhappy. I said I wasn't unhappy, just curious. He said curiosity and vows don't mix well. I said he was narrow-minded. He said he'd think about it. That's what he always says when he doesn't want to argue. I told Tara, my sister, about it. She squealed like it was the best idea she'd ever heard. She said I was evolving and that Eli was too quiet for someone like me. My mother, Hannah, frowned but didn't say much. She said, marriage takes patience. My mother-in-law, Nora, didn't hide her disgust when she heard. She told Eli he should get ahead of the mess before it spreads. He told her to stop meddling. I told Nora that her generation wouldn't understand modern love. She said love wasn't supposed to need definitions. I called her bitter. At work, I dropped hints about my new arrangement. The assistants listened wide-eyed. Maya, the hygienist, asked if Eli was really okay with it. I said he respected my honesty. That wasn't exactly true, but it sounded noble. Dr. Marcus overheard once and said I was courageous for living authentically. That word, authentic, echoed in my head all day. After that, I started staying later at the clinic. Dr. Marcus said I could help with the new patient records. Sometimes he'd bring coffee into the front office and ask about my marriage. I told him we were redefining boundaries. He smiled and said, not many couples are that secure. I told him I hoped Eli would adjust soon. Marcus said some people never do. One night, Eli made spaghetti and asked if I'd be home earlier from then on. I said my boss needed help with new software. He said that wasn't my job. I told him maybe he should be happy I was valued somewhere. He said he was just worried I was tired. I said he didn't like my independence. He said he liked me better when I wasn't performing for an audience. I said maybe I'd rather have applause than silence. He went back to eating without a word, and I felt both triumphant and sick. At Tara's apartment that weekend, I told her I might go to a dental conference with Dr. Marcus in Phoenix. She shrieked that I had to go, that a change of air would show me what I'd been missing. I said it was just work. She said maybe work was exactly what I needed. I texted Eli about it later. He replied, sure, just let me know the dates. That single line irritated me. No questions, no fight, just acceptance, which somehow felt worse than anger. The next morning at the clinic, Dr. Marcus said the conference hotel was nice, with a pool and great food. I said I'd think about it. He said I deserved to go because I'd worked hard. I told Maya later that I might travel for career development. She nodded, but her eyes said something else, pity or maybe judgment. When I got home, Eli and Lila were baking cookies. She had flour on her nose, and he was pretending to sneeze sugar. It was sweet, too sweet. I kissed Lila's head and said I had emails to check. Eli said she wanted me to taste one. I said I was on a deadline. He looked at me with that quiet patience again, and I suddenly hated it. That night I told him he was suffocating me with kindness. He asked how kindness could suffocate. I said it felt like control disguised as care. He said he didn't understand. I told him that was the problem. He never tried to understand me beyond his calm world. He said he was trying right now. I said trying wasn't enough. He said maybe nothing ever would be. I told him that was a cruel thing to say. He said he was just being honest. I said honesty was supposed to help, not hurt. The next day, I mentioned to Dr. Marcus that Eli didn't take my openness well. He smiled like he expected that. He said people who fear change often call it betrayal. I said exactly, and that it wasn't about cheating, just growth. He said growth is a nice word for wanting something new. I laughed, but I felt the meaning sink in. That night, I told Eli that monogamy was unnatural. He said promises weren't supposed to be easy. I said he was acting like I wanted to ruin us. He said he wasn't sure what us meant anymore. I said maybe he should read more modern books instead of living like a monk. He said he liked peace, not chaos. I said peace was boring. He looked tired again and said, if freedom was what I needed, he wouldn't stop me. I took that as understanding. Later, when I told Tara he didn't even argue, she said that meant I'd already won. I agreed, though part of me wanted him to fight. I told myself his silence was approval, not surrender. I convinced myself I'd done the right thing, told the truth, taken charge, opened the door to possibility. Before bed, I looked at the hotel booking site for the conference. I hovered over confirm reservation. Lila's drawing was still on my desk, a picture of our family holding hands. I pushed it aside. I clicked confirm. I whispered to myself that it wasn't betrayal if everyone knew. The trip came sooner than I expected. Dr. Marcus said I could ride with him, since the clinic would cover the gas. I told Eli 2 days before we left. He said very simply, drive safe. I wanted him to protest, to tell me not to go, but he didn't. That quiet made me furious. I said he should at least act like he cared. He said he trusted me. I told him trust without interest was laziness. He said maybe I didn't know the difference anymore. I slammed the door before he could finish. Tara helped me pack, throwing dresses and sandals into the suitcase like we were going on vacation. She said I should post pictures to show what confidence looks like. I said it wasn't about showing off. She said, then why are you smiling so much? I told her it was because I finally felt free. She raised her glass and said, freedom looks good on me. At the conference hotel, everything sparkled. Mirrors, white tablecloths, polished shoes. Dr. Marcus introduced me to other clinic owners as his right hand. They asked if his wife minded him traveling with staff. He laughed and said, Seraphine keeps me organized. I laughed too, though it sounded false even to me. That night, after dinner, he walked me to my room and said I was impressive, that he needed someone like me long-term. I said I was flattered. He said he meant it. I told him good night and closed the door slowly, hoping he'd see it as mysterious, not final. The next morning, my phone buzzed with messages from Tara asking for pictures. I sent her one of me by the hotel pool, captioned, work hard, leave honest. She replied with a string of fire emojis. Later, Eli texted, asking how the conference was going. I wrote back, good, busy. He said, glad you're learning new things. That calm tone again, no jealousy, no emotion. I wanted him to sound human, but all I got was politeness. At the last evening dinner, I ended up sitting next to Dr. Marcus while everyone toasted to growth and innovation. He leaned close and said, Eli must be very open-minded. I asked why. He said not every husband would be comfortable with this arrangement. I said Eli was progressive. He smiled like he didn't believe me. Later, in the hallway, a hygienist from another clinic asked if we were a couple. I said no, just colleagues. She shrugged, the kind of shrug that meant she didn't buy it either. When I returned home, Eli was on the couch reading with Lila asleep beside him. He looked up, smiled faintly, and asked if I had fun. I said it wasn't about fun, it was professional. He said he was glad it went well. I asked if he'd missed me. He said of course, then added that Lila had been drawing pictures of airplanes and suitcases. I told him she was creative. He said maybe she just noticed what was missing. The next day at work, Maya whispered that people were talking. She said someone saw photos of me and Dr. Marcus from the conference. I said people love gossip. She said HR might ask questions because of the captions. Tara had posted one saying, "My sister living her truth." I laughed like it was harmless. Dr. Marcus told me later that it would blow over. He said HR was overly sensitive about optics. I told him I wasn't worried. Still, I noticed he stopped walking me to my car after that. At home, I decided to clarify things before rumors reached Eli. Over dinner, I told him that if people said anything strange, it was just jealousy about how honest we were. He asked what people might say. I said they'd exaggerate. He asked what they'd be exaggerating. I said he was interrogating me. He said he was trying to understand. I told him if he trusted me, he wouldn't ask. He said trust and silence weren't the same. I called him controlling. He said quietly, "If you think I'm controlling, you don't really know me." That week, I couldn't stop checking my phone. Every time it buzzed, I half expected HR to call, but instead it was Tara sending memes about empowered women. I told her things at home were tense. She said tension meant growth. She said men always panic before they evolve. I repeated that line to myself like a prayer. A few days later, Nora invited us to dinner. I didn't want to go, but Eli said Lila missed her grandmother. At the table, Nora asked about my freedom plan. I smiled and said it was going great. She said I was risking my family for attention. I told her she was scared of women who speak truth. She said truth doesn't need applause. I told her to stop moralizing. Eli didn't defend me. He just sat there, cutting his food slowly. That silence again, like he was letting me hang myself with my own words. When we left, I told him he should have told her to stop. He said she wasn't wrong. I told him he was pathetic. He said he hoped I'd find what I was looking for. That night, I posted a quote, "Love should be free, not caged by fear." Within minutes, Tara reshared it, writing, "Preach, sister." I smiled, imagining people reading and envying my courage. But when I checked the comments, one caught my eye. Free doesn't mean faithless. I deleted it instantly. The next morning, Dr. Marcus called me into his office. He said HR had received an anonymous email about inappropriate boundaries. He said they needed to interview us separately. I asked who sent it. He said probably someone jealous. I said maybe Maya. He told me to stay calm and say it was all professional. I said I could handle it. He smiled, but I noticed he didn't meet my eyes. That evening, when I came home, Eli was in the kitchen with a folder on the counter. He said he'd been organizing paperwork for the future. I asked what that meant. He said we'd talk later. I said I hated when he acted like a mystery. He said sometimes silence was safer than arguments. I rolled my eyes and went upstairs, pretending it didn't matter. Before bed, I opened my messages. HR had scheduled my interview for next week. Tara texted, "If things blow up, spin it as empowerment." I typed back, "He's acting weird." She replied, "Weird how?" I stared at the folder still sitting on the kitchen counter and wrote, "Quiet. Too quiet." The HR interview was worse than I expected. The manager, a thin woman named Lorna, smiled too politely while reading from a form. She asked if I'd ever socialized alone with Dr. Marcus outside of clinic hours. I said yes, but only for work trips. She asked if the hotel room bookings were company paid or personal. I said company, though I wasn't sure anymore. She asked if I was aware of the staff gossip. I said gossip came from envy. She wrote something down and thanked me for my honesty. When I stepped outside, Dr. Marcus avoided my gaze. His door stayed closed the rest of the day. That night, I told Eli that HR was making a big deal out of nothing. He said quietly that maybe it wasn't nothing. I told him not to take their side. He said he wasn't taking anyone's side, just observing. I said I hated when he acted like a scientist studying a bug. He said, observation prevents explosion. I told him he sounded ridiculous. He didn't respond, just continued chopping vegetables. I wanted him to throw the knife, yell, anything. But he only said we could eat when I was ready. At Tara's apartment later, I complained about how everyone was judging me. She poured wine and said that men panic when women take control. She said HR's just protecting their image, not me. I said Dr. Marcus hadn't texted all day. She said bosses always get scared when things get serious. She told me to remind him who risked more. I texted him, "We're fine, right?" He replied, "Let's be careful for now." That phrase, "for now," bothered me. Back home, Eli was reading on the couch again. I told him Tara said things would calm down. He said, "You still listen to Tara?" I said at least she listens back. He said he listens, I just don't like his answers. I said he was judging me. He said no, I was judging myself. I stormed upstairs, slamming the door, but his calm footsteps never followed. 2 days later, I received an email from HR stating that administrative review may result in temporary leave. I felt my stomach drop. I went straight to Dr. Marcus's office to demand an explanation. He said HR was covering themselves. I said he could defend me. He said he couldn't interfere. I said we were in this together. He said we weren't married. That word, married, cut like glass. That night, I accused Eli of leaking something. He looked up slowly and said, "What would I leak?" I said, maybe he'd written the anonymous complaint. He said he didn't need to, since everything was already visible. I asked what he meant. He said people tell on themselves more efficiently than others ever could. I told him he sounded smug. He said maybe he'd just learned from me. Over the next week, Dr. Marcus avoided me completely. His messages turned formal. Please update schedule and confirm supply order. I told myself he was just being cautious. But when I saw him laughing with Maya near the supply closet, my chest tightened. Later that night, I texted him, "I thought you cared." He replied, "I do, but not at this cost." I threw my phone across the couch. When I told Tara, she said, men always retreat when the spotlight turns on. She said I should control the story before someone else did. I asked what she meant. She said I should post about choosing myself, that people would support me. So I did. I wrote, "I'm tired of pretending honesty is betrayal." The likes came quickly. Friends, co-workers, even strangers. For a few hours, I felt powerful again. Then Nora called. She asked if I'd lost my mind. She said people were messaging her, asking if Eli was okay. I told her to stay out of it. She said she was worried about her granddaughter growing up seeing this mess online. I said she should thank me for teaching independence. She said independence without responsibility is just chaos. I hung up. Later that evening, Eli came home with a thick envelope. He said it was from an attorney. I laughed, asked if he was suing me for being modern. He said it was for clarity and fairness. I tore it open, scanning phrases like disclosure of assets and temporary custody framework. My heart pounded. I said he was threatening me. He said it was protection, not punishment. I told him he was humiliating me. He said no one else had to know unless I told them. I told him he was cold. He said warmth didn't survive fire. That night I couldn't sleep. I scrolled through my post again. The comments had changed. Some were supportive, but others said things like, "Marriage is not a social experiment." Someone tagged Dr. Marcus's clinic page. I panicked and deleted everything, but screenshots had already spread. The next morning, Lila asked why Daddy slept in the guest room. I told her Daddy needed space because grown-ups were busy. She asked if we were fighting. I said no, just learning to share better. She said sharing made her sad. I told her sadness meant growth, the same lie I'd told myself. When I dropped her at school, Eli didn't kiss me goodbye. He just said, "Take care of yourself." I said, "You mean goodbye like I'm leaving?" He said, "Everyone leaves eventually." At Tara's that evening, I told her he'd gone insane. She said, "He's bluffing. He'll never go through with it." She said men love drama but hate paperwork. I wanted to believe her. But when I checked my email later, there was a message from Jane Porter, family law attorney. "Please review attached preliminary petition for acknowledgement." Attached was a PDF titled, "Veil versus Veil." I called Eli immediately. He answered but said nothing. I said, "You wouldn't really file this, right?" He said, "You asked for freedom. This is what freedom looks like when it's written down." I told him he couldn't destroy our family over a few conversations. He said, "You destroyed the meaning long before the papers." I shouted that he was twisting everything. He said, "No, I'm finally straightening it." When I hung up, my hands were shaking. Tara said I should post again, make him look controlling. I said maybe I should wait. She said waiting means losing. I stared at the glowing laptop screen until I saw my reflection. Tired eyes, smudged makeup, a face I barely recognized. Then a knock at the door startled me. When I opened it, a courier stood there with another envelope, heavier than the first. The label read, "Notice of temporary restraining orders, financial and custodial." The man asked for my signature. I scribbled it. As he left, the words on the top sheet blurred. All I could read clearly was my name next to the phrase, "Respondent." The papers sat on the table like a living thing. I stared at them all morning, tracing the black lines of my name as if that could erase them. Respondent. Such a cold word, like something a stranger would call me. When Eli came to pick up Lila for school, he didn't even look inside. He just said, "She has her lunch?" I said yes. He said, "Thank you." That was all. He didn't glance at the mess on the counter, the papers, the coffee stains, my shaking hands. I called Tara as soon as they left. She said this was a scare tactic. She told me to act calm, post something about focusing on personal healing. I said maybe I should call Eli and talk face to face. She said, "Never chase, let him sweat." I told her he doesn't sweat. She said, "Then make him look guilty instead." So I did what she suggested. I posted a picture of a sunrise with the caption, "When people try to control your light, shine brighter." It got hundreds of likes. For a moment, I felt safe again. That afternoon, HR called. Lorna said the investigation had finished, and they were taking appropriate steps. I asked what that meant. She said both Dr. Marcus and I were being placed on administrative leave. I told her she couldn't do that. I'd done nothing wrong. She said the company had to protect its reputation. I told her maybe they should protect loyal employees. She said it wasn't personal. That was the problem. None of this felt personal anymore. When I called Dr. Marcus, he didn't answer. I sent a long message saying we needed to stay united. Hours later, he replied, "Let's avoid contact until HR finalizes everything." Just like that, formal, detached. I stared at the screen, realizing that he'd already moved to protect himself. I felt betrayed, but told myself he was just scared. Everyone was scared. That evening, Nora called. She said she'd seen my post and wanted to know if I was implying something about her son. I told her to stop twisting things. She said I'd twisted enough. She asked if I'd thought about what all this was doing to Lila. I said my daughter needed a strong mother. Nora said she needed stability. I said stability was overrated. She said chaos doesn't raise children. I hung up before I started crying. When Eli brought Lila home, I asked if we could talk. He said everything needed to go through the lawyer now. I said that was insane. We were still married. He said that was temporary. I told him he was overreacting. He said, "Maybe, but overreacting legally." I told him he was being cruel. He said, "No, I'm being careful." I asked if he still loved me. He said that wasn't relevant to the documents. Then he picked up his coat and left. Tara arrived later with takeout and a plan. She said I had to control the optics. She said to post screenshots of Eli's messages to prove he was cold, distant. I said that wasn't illegal. She said people don't care about legality, only emotions. I hesitated, but finally agreed. I posted part of a message where Eli said, "We'll follow court procedure from now on." I captioned it, "Some men hide behind paperwork when they can't handle passion." It spread quickly. Comments came, people calling him heartless, calling me brave. For a few hours, I believed my version again. Then, the next morning, my phone buzzed with a new email from an address I didn't know. It was from Jane Porter, Eli's attorney. Notice: public disparagement violation risk. Attached was a screenshot of my post. The message was polite but sharp. You are reminded that defamatory or misleading public statements may impact ongoing legal proceedings. I deleted the post instantly, but the pit in my stomach stayed. At work, or what was left of it, I packed my things into a small box. Maya avoided eye contact. When I said goodbye, she said softly, "I hope you take care of yourself." I almost laughed. How could I, when everyone else was taking care of my punishment? That evening, I drove to my mother's house. She hugged me, then said, maybe I should stop fighting so publicly. I said she didn't understand. She said sometimes silence is the only way to be heard. I said she sounded like Eli. She said maybe that's why he'd always seemed wiser than me. I left before dessert. When I got home, the house looked wrong. A locksmith sticker was on the door frame, and the locks had been changed. A note was taped beside the handle. Please use the co-parenting app for communication. Access to shared property is temporarily suspended pending review. I froze. I knocked once, twice, then harder. No answer. Through the window, I saw the edge of Lila's toy box, the same one I'd packed myself when she was born. Now it wasn't mine to touch. I called Eli's phone until it went to voicemail. I said he couldn't just lock me out. I said we could still fix things if he'd stop treating me like an enemy. Then I said something I regretted, that he'd regret doing this to me. A few hours later, my phone buzzed again. This time, another email from Jane Porter, short and calm. Any threats or contact outside approved channels may be submitted as evidence. Please refrain. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. I realized he'd already thought of everything. The accounts, the lawyer, the house, even my words. He wasn't angry anymore. He was organized. Tara told me to come stay with her. She said it would make a great new chapter. I said maybe I'd just stay in a hotel. She said, then at least film a video about it. People love redemption arcs. I laughed until my throat hurt. When I hung up, I looked again at the note on the door. The phrase pending review stuck in my head. That's what my whole life had become. Under review. Then, as if the world wanted to prove the point, another notification appeared on my phone. Court. Preliminary hearing date confirmed. The location. Family Courtroom 2B. The time, next Thursday, 9 a.m. I stood on the porch in the fading light, the new locks gleaming. Behind them, I could hear the faint hum of Lila's bedtime story through the walls. Eli's calm voice reading about planets and stars. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass and whispered that I just wanted to come home. No one answered. The morning of the hearing came grey and heavy. I barely slept. Tara said to dress soft but strong, so I wore a cream blouse and my old pearl earrings, the ones Eli bought years ago for our anniversary. I told myself it would remind him who I was before everything went wrong. When I got to the courthouse, he was already there, sitting with his lawyer, Jane Porter. He didn't look angry, just steady, as if he'd rehearsed calm until it became armor. Jane greeted me politely, her eyes unreadable. My own lawyer, a tired man named Lucas, told me to let him speak for me. I nodded but already felt invisible. The judge arrived, papers shuffled, and the words began. Assets, custody, temporary orders. I tried to follow, but they spoke like it was math, not life. Jane presented folders one by one, each labeled with dates. When she said social media exhibits, my heart lurched. She read excerpts from my posts. Love should be free. Some men hide behind paperwork. She said these public statements created reputational risk and contradicted my claims of emotional abuse. I wanted to shout that it wasn't about reputation. It was about honesty. But Lucas squeezed my wrist and whispered, "Let it go." Then Jane moved to bank records. She spoke of hotel charges during the conference, rideshare trips billed at midnight, and an internal HR report confirming suspension for boundary violations. Each phrase cut cleaner than shouting ever could. When it was my turn, I said Eli had ignored me for years, that I just wanted connection. The judge asked if that justified financial misuse or misrepresentation at work. I said I didn't misuse anything. Jane showed a printed email from Dr. Marcus, thanking me for a beautiful weekend. I said it was a misunderstanding. The judge's pen didn't stop moving. Eli didn't gloat. He didn't even look at me while all of this was said. When Jane mentioned our daughter, his hand twitched slightly on the table, the only crack in his control. She explained that Eli was requesting temporary primary custody for stability and to minimize exposure to online hostility. Hearing the word custody felt like falling through ice. I whispered to Lucas that this was ridiculous, that I was still her mother. He said it was temporary. It didn't sound temporary. When the session ended, the judge said he would review everything by next week. We were told not to contact each other, except through the co-parenting app. I wanted to run after Eli as he walked out, but Jane stayed close beside him, talking quietly. I hated her composure more than anything. Outside the courtroom, reporters weren't waiting, just the silence of consequence. I found a bench and called Tara. She said it sounded like legal bullying and that I should post a statement to explain my side. I said I couldn't. Jane had warned me. Tara laughed, saying he was silencing me. I said maybe silence wasn't the worst thing anymore. She sighed and said I was giving up. I hung up. Later that day, another email arrived from HR. Final determination, termination due to misconduct. My hands went cold. Attached was the letter, short, clinical, final. I'd spent 6 years there, gone in 3 sentences. I forwarded it to Tara, who wrote back, "They can't do that." I didn't answer. That evening, I drove to Nora's house uninvited. She opened the door but didn't step aside. She said Leela was in bed. I said I just wanted to say goodnight. She said it wasn't allowed right now. I told her she was poisoning my daughter against me. She said she didn't have to. Children notice everything. I said Eli was manipulating her. She said maybe he was finally protecting her. Her voice stayed calm, steady, the same tone her son used. Back home, or what used to be home, I stayed in the car outside the locked door. Through the curtains I saw the faint flicker of the TV, the familiar blue glow. I thought of how Eli used to sit there, reading while I scrolled my phone. How quiet used to mean peace. Now quiet felt like punishment. My phone buzzed again, Lucas this time. He said Jane had emailed an updated agreement. Financial freeze extended, custody arrangement pending final review. He said Eli's team wanted to resolve things amicably. I laughed out loud. Nothing about this was amicable. When I finally went inside my temporary rental, I opened my laptop and stared at the empty social feed. I typed a long post about betrayal, about being punished for truth, but before pressing post, I stopped. I imagined Jane printing it, showing it to a judge, turning it into another piece of paper with my name on top. I deleted it. At midnight, my phone lit up with a notification from the co-parenting app. It was Eli. "Lila is asleep. She asked if you're okay." I typed back, "I'm fine. Tell her I love her." Then another message came. She knows. I stared at those 2 words until the screen dimmed. I wanted to believe it, but the house key on my ring felt heavier than ever, like proof of something that no longer existed. The next morning, a courier arrived again. More papers. Temporary orders, approved. The summary read like a verdict. Eli granted primary physical custody, shared financial accounts frozen, non-disparagement clause confirmed. My signature space at the bottom waited, blank. I signed without reading further. I folded the papers, placed them on the counter, and realized there was nothing left to argue about. I had asked for freedom, and the law had given it to me, clean, documented, and cold. Outside, the air smelled like rain. Somewhere in the distance, a school bell rang. I thought of Leela walking into class, her small backpack bouncing with each step, not knowing that her mother had finally learned what real consequences look like. The final hearing was faster than I imagined. The courtroom lights were harsh, the air dry, the clerk's voice steady as she read the case number. Eli sat across from me, that same composure in place. I used to think it was weakness. Now I understood it was armor. Jane Porter stood beside him, calm and neat, while my own lawyer flipped through papers that already felt useless. The judge spoke softly, summarizing what had already been decided. Custody, primary to the father, visitation, alternate weekends, supervised transition. Assets, divided per prior documentation. Accounts, restricted pending audit. I barely heard the words. They blurred together like water over glass. When the judge asked if I understood, I nodded even though my throat hurt. Jane handed over a thin folder of final exhibits. Screenshots, receipts, time logs, everything that had quietly dismantled the life I thought I controlled. She mentioned how Eli had complied with every request, never retaliated, never violated the communication rules. "This shows a pattern of stability," she said. The judge nodded. No one asked about my feelings. When it was over, Eli stood to leave. I whispered his name. He stopped but didn't turn around. I said I never meant to destroy anything, that I only wanted honesty. He said, "You got it." Then he walked out, simple as that. Outside, Nora was waiting with Lila. My daughter smiled shyly, unsure whether to run to me or not. Nora stepped back, letting her. I knelt down, hugged her quickly, whispered that I'd see her soon. She asked if I was coming home. I said I'd try, though we both knew what the answer really was. When they left, I stood on the courthouse steps alone. The wind tugged at the folder in my hands until one sheet slipped free and landed face up on the concrete. It was the signed order, Vale v. Vale, judgment entered. I stared at my own name printed next to his, realizing this was the last thing we'd ever share. Tara texted asking how it went. I didn't reply. There was nothing to spin now, no new version to post. The story was finished, written in language colder than truth, but stronger than denial. I walked to my car, sat behind the wheel, and opened the envelope one last time. At the bottom of the judgment was a single note, non-disparagement terms accepted by both parties. That line meant I couldn't tell anyone my side anymore, not publicly, not even to save face. Maybe that was for the best. When I started the engine, rain began to fall, soft, careful, as if the world was trying not to make a sound. For the first time, I didn't feel angry, just empty. I'd asked for freedom, and now I had it, signed, sealed, and delivered. Freedom wasn't what I thought, it was silence. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.